Tonight on Kat's Vegan Kitchen, I'm going to show you how to do the impossible. I am going to show you how to make an authentic Italian meatball without the meat. As a bonus, I'm going to show you how to make a traditional Italian spaghetti sauce, meatless as well. Welcome to Kat's Vegan Kitchen. Remember, check out the description for the full written recipe and helpful links. Let's get started. I talk a lot about my Lebanese grandmother and how I learned to cook traditional recipes from her, but the other side of my family was Italian. There is nothing like walking into an Italian household and smelling fresh sauce cooking. For this recipe, we're going to use the high quality olive oil, and we are going to cover the bottom of our pan with olive oil. Saute up about half a yellow onion chopped fine until it is translucent. If you want to make this recipe oil-free, just use a good quality vegan chicken broth or vegan beef broth. While your onions are cooking, you want to chop 2 to 3 cloves of garlic really fine and about 2 tablespoons of fresh parsley. If you don't have fresh parsley, use dried parsley, but use about a teaspoon to a teaspoon and a half. Add your garlic to your sauteing onions, and once it's fragrant, we're going to add in our next ingredients. Your authentic Italian sauce is only going to be as good as the tomatoes you use. The gold standard is fresh grown tomatoes from your garden, but if you don't have those, which most people don't, make sure you use a good quality canned tomato. These are grown in Italy. San Marzano tomatoes are one of my favorites. For this recipe, you want to use 28-ounce can of crushed tomatoes. I only had whole tomatoes, so I just pureed them in my blender. The rest of this recipe is insanely simple. Add about a teaspoon of fresh ground pepper, a teaspoon of salt, a teaspoon of oregano, and a tablespoon or 2 of fresh parsley. You can add in basil if you want, but there was a little bit of basil in the tomatoes I used, so I'm not going to add any in. You can also use fresh oregano if you have it. Just remember, use a little bit more fresh if you're going to use fresh rather than dry. I'm gonna cover my sauce and let it simmer for about an hour and a half or 2 hours over really low heat. Well, my delicious, authentic Italian sauce is cooking up and making my house smell like my grandmother's Italian kitchen. I'm gonna show you how to make the most delicious vegan meatballs you'll ever have. I've been vegan for about 24 years, and I was happy to eat meatballs made out of grains and nuts and things like that, but I have to say Impossible Meat has really changed the game and allowed me to make some of my family recipes taste just like I remember. I am pretty sure I could fool my Italian family with these. Add 1 12-ounce package of thawed Impossible Meat to a large bowl. We're going to be using our hands today, so get ready to get your hands nice and messy. Add in a little less than 1/2 cup of Italian-style breadcrumbs. 1/2 cup of vegan Parmesan cheese. I'm going to link my recipe for vegan Parmesan cheese, which I'm using in this recipe, in this corner, or maybe this corner, but you can use commercial Parmesan cheese if you want as well. Add in 3 cloves of chopped garlic, about a tablespoon of fresh parsley or a teaspoon of dried parsley, 3/4 teaspoon to a teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of dried oregano, a heaping teaspoon of dried basil or a tablespoon of fresh basil. First mix by mixing this up really well with our hands. Our last 2 ingredients are our milk and our egg. Using eggs in vegan recipes, you have to know what kind of egg replacer to use for what recipe. For this recipe, I really like to use chia or flax seed eggs. The way I do that is I take 1 tablespoon of chia seeds and I mix it in with 2.5 tablespoons of water. I'm just gonna gently stir that and let it sit for about a minute. The chia seeds are going to dissolve a little bit. They make the perfect egg for this recipe and they don't add any flavor. I'm going to add in 2 to 4 ounces of a really tasty plant-based milk. I like to use macadamia or cashew or oat milk for this recipe. My flax egg, which you can see has gotten nice and gelatinous. Give that a mix with your hands. This is one of those recipes that after you make it a time or 2, you'll know how moist you want it. This is just about perfect. The meat is sticking to my hands a little bit, but not too much. We're gonna bake our meatballs in a 350-degree oven for about 12 to 15 minutes, so make sure you preheat your oven. You're gonna roll your meatballs into 1-inch balls about that size. This recipe should make about 16 to 18 meatballs. These meatballs are every bit as flavorful as the traditional meatballs you grew up eating, but they have less saturated fat, no cholesterol, and none of the cruelty of traditional meatballs. Plus, the International Panel on Climate Change tells us that one of the best ways to decrease our carbon footprint is by eating less meat. Growing up in an Italian family, there weren't a lot of vegan options at the holiday dinner table. My family said things like, "It's St. Joseph's Day. We won't eat meat, we'll eat fish." Typically, I just bake these in the oven for about 12 to 15 minutes, but I'm gonna show you a secret to make the outsides extra crispy. Take some sprayed avocado oil, and I'm just going to spray it in my hand. I'm gonna rub my hands together and just gently coat the outside of my meatballs with a little bit of that avocado oil. Avocado oil is great for this because it does not burn while it's baking. Time to pop those puppies in the oven and wait for them to bake up. While my meatballs are baking, I'm checking in on my delicious sauce. If you don't want to make your sauce from scratch, that's okay. Just use a high quality sauce. I really like Rao's. It really tastes like my grandmother's spaghetti sauce. I tasted my sauce, always taste your food, and I decided it needs a little bit more salt. You can also add in a little bit of crushed red pepper if you want a little bit of spice to your sauce. Look how nice and thick and beautiful that is now. Check out my authentic Italian meatballs that I covered with my homemade tomato sauce. My husband's favorite way to eat these is on a meatball sub. You take about 3 meatballs, some of your delicious sauce, and I like to put on some kind of vegan cheese. For this, I love this Follow Your Heart smoked Gouda. I put it under the broiler for just about a minute, and voila, you have the most delicious vegan meatball sub. If you tried this and love this recipe, hit that thumbs up button so you never miss a recipe. Don't forget, you can always leave a comment below if you want to see a specific recipe. I'll be happy to make it for you. Thanks for watching. I hope to see you next time on Kat's Vegan Kitchen. I'm sweating balls.